Hey everybody, Quest-Nutrition and Athletics here again with new school James Vang and old school.
Sherman Ledford.
And here today we actually have a guest that's going to be joining us, Josh Rohr. Josh, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I guess you can call me kind of middle of the road school.
Middle of the road school, yeah. We kind of got all three age group or generations here, which is kind of cool. Um, but today we kind of want to go in a little bit about some of the things that's been going on with USAPL and kind of the current state of things. But really quick, before we get into that, just want to let everybody know, all the viewers and all the listeners to know that USAPL Open Nationals and Nationals is coming up soon, about 6 or so weeks in Daytona. Team Quest is going to have a booth there. So if you got any items or anything that you're curious about that we've already been going through or anything on the website that you might want to check out, feel free to see us at the booth. At the same time, we're going to be teaming up along with Team Rohr booth too. So if you need any coaching inquiries or any apparel or anything like that, feel free to stop at Team Quest booth and Team Rohr's booth at Open Nationals. Anything you want to add on that, Josh?
No, I guess we'll get into that more, but the NGB is at the end of that week. So if you guys want to, I guess, hear more about what we're about to discuss, I'd say come to that NGB meeting.
Okay. Sherman?
Just add on to that, if there's something specific that you'd like to see us have at the booth, let us know. So we might not forget something that somebody's looking for, but, we're going to have the Inzer gear, have some supplements, different things that's, Quest related kind of stuff. So hit us up, come by and see us. We're glad to see y'all.
Yeah, Sherman and I, we were talking about doing some sort of raffle or something like that as well. So we'll have details about that as it gets closer, but we'll have a few surprises for you, but it'll be worth your while. Come by the booth.
Perfect. All right. So to the juicy stuff. So there's been a lot of changes going on between, I guess, USAPL and the IPF. Josh and Sherman are kind of in the loop in a little bit of that, but I would like them to kind of elaborate on some of the things that are going to impact USAPL as a whole and as lifters. I'm just going to go ahead and let Josh, if you got some things that are concerning or things that are worth mentioning with some of the changes going on in the USAPL as of not right now.
Yeah, I guess to start, I'll say that as of right now, there really are no changes actually happening. What the situation is the IPF is saying that we need to be 100% Tier 1 WADA compliant, top to bottom, meaning all third-party drug testing. And that's the part, that's one part of it. So basically what that means is, currently the way we do our drug testing is our referees administer the drug tests, and that's how the tests are done, sent to the lab analyzes them, etc. The new, I guess, requirement by the IPF is that we use all WADA accredited third-party organizations, which is essentially USADA. So on the surface, that sounds like a great thing. Being Tier 1 WADA compliant, WADA is known as the gold standard of drug testing. They're what oversees the drug testing in the Olympics and things like that. The issue comes in is the cost of it. Basically, the rough figures, if we were to continue drug testing, at the current level that we are at, local level, national level, et cetera, and the amount of tests that we're doing, 10%, the cost of each drug test is estimated at roughly $2,000 to go third party, which basically means that we're looking at a couple $1 million budget for drug testing, which we do not have. So that's where it gets tricky, is like trying to navigate that, because, just to put it in perspective, to be WADA compliant, Tier 1 WADA compliant, like there isn't really a minimum number of drug tests you have to do. You just have to do them all third party. So, that's why, for I think a lot of a lot of governing bodies and things like that, they are okay with testing less and being WADA compliant. USA Powerlifting, on the other hand, was founded on drug testing at all levels. So, what a lot of sports and things do is they just don't test at the local level. So they have less drug tests they have to administer, so they can manage those costs. So that's just not something that seems realistic for USA Powerlifting to do, because we want to drug test at every level, right? So
Yeah. So what are some of the possible outcomes if there's not any drug testing at the local level? Like, how would that influence like national and international type, thing?
So I guess, yeah, option one, or option A, I should say, is to just become fully WADA compliant and stop testing at the local level. Implication there is there's going to be no incentive or no deterrent for people to cheat at the local level because they know they're not getting tested. So that becomes a big problem. Both in terms of not being able to deter people from cheating, but also it essentially is going against the founding principles of USA Powerlifting, is to drug test at every level. So it just makes it a slippery slope there that, I don't know that we want to go down.
Agreed. Sherman?
I think a lot of this stuff, has been a thunderstorm coming for a long time. IPF just likes to try to, push people to do what they want to do, regardless if it's right or wrong or whatever. So, and then a lot of this too revolves around the Olympic dream in powerlifting, which is, I think most people think, is a farce. So, so if you're looking at it in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of things that, have been, suspect or just not, above board on a lot of things that these guys try to push on you for decades. And sometimes, somehow, it seems like that we get treated differently than a lot of other countries. And I think a lot of people can verify that. And I think it's well known anyway. So, but I mean, as powerlifting goes and stuff like that, this is just, a cycle. 20 years ago, or a little bit over 20 years ago, USPF was the IPF affiliate, and they kind of bowed up to the IPF, and USAPL or ADFPA picked up the torch and kind of carried from them. And back then, a lot of it was dependent on, or kind of, revolving around the drug testing back then too. I mean, we drug tested, so they were really, about that. So now it's about not drug testing. So, you can kind of see, that's just one way to look at things, that, how did we get from there to here, So, and like I say, and a lot of this too is money. I mean, money drives most everything. So it just needs to be, known that that's what we're dealing with. So, and a lot of people know that, because that's what drives most everything, where people want to compete a lot of times, where people do compete, what people's dreams and aspirations are and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. So for me, when I first started with USAPL, one of the reasons why like I really, really liked the USAPL was because it was supposedly drug-free / drug tested. And growing up, I never had any aspirations to take steroids or anything like that. So I really liked the USAPL and what they stand for. And I feel like if we take this step where we don't do local drug testing, that might deteriorate like someone like me who's never powerlifted before, and I want to come compete at a local level, knowing that there might be people who could or could not be taking stuff. And then that kind of skews the way that I look at competition and where my strength level's at. Even if I'm the strongest guy that might be going from a local level to nationals, what if some hometown hero just decided to come through, like on all kinds of steroids that you can imagine, come break all the state records, and then the state records and the state totals are higher than the first place guy for nationals and even in worlds, for that matter. And that, I think that is going to go negatively, especially for the new generation, because a lot of young kids nowadays, a lot of the times they want to get into powerlifting because they want to break records, they want to lift really, really heavy. And then you got, again, I like to use Ronnie Coleman as an example, but like imagine if someone like Ronnie Coleman just decided to come out of the blue, super jacked up and come to the state meet competing in my weight class. How am I supposed to feel about competing against that? So I think like these are some things that we should take into consideration when it comes to like local drug testing.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, I think there are, some out of the box thinking that can be kind of talked about if the opportunity arises or something. And if they're not local tests, I would feel like that the meet directors or the state chair or whatever, if there was somebody that's suspect, I would think they would be able to or should, kind of point a finger about somebody getting an OMT. If that's a situation, what James is talking about, we got a guy just came in here and did this, this, and this, and this. Maybe we need to get this guy an OMT. I don't know if that's the answer, because USAPL was built on, the ground floor and the ADFPA, about drug testing. And do they want to do that? Do they want to try to do that? There are different scenarios out there, but like I say, things evolve and, things open up and change and stuff like that. And that's something that's never going to stop, so if USAPL goes on their own and the IPF, affiliates with somebody else in America to have opportunity for the guys that want to go to the IPF. And, you have to really wonder, and see what some of the lifters, what they really want to do, and some of the ground level guys that are not, in the fact of in the, top 25 in their weight class in the United States, do they care? But the guys that are in the top 10 of their weight class, maybe they do care. So, and I think that was something that you saw back in the late 90s, the early 2000s when a split happened and the IPF picked up ADFPA, which turned into USAPL. That just, USPF was around for, several more years, but the decline started, a couple years after that. Now, is that what's going to happen with the USAPL? And would that be something that, people are going to have to make a decision to go one way or the other? There's people out there that want to compete against the best, and the IPF is the best. I mean, that's just what it's been forever, and it's legit. It's not like going to a meet and somebody wearing 5 plies of fabric and squatting 3 inches above parallel. That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about how the records were done back, 20 years ago is hopefully real close to what they're done now. I mean, the equipment has changed and it's gotten better, but the sport's gotten cleaner too. And I think USAPL has been a big factor in that, and then sometimes we're frowned at sometimes by doing so many drug tests and then catching people. And then that has actually backfired on us. Don't you think, Josh? And the fact that the IPF is snarling at us for having so many drug failures, but we're doing more drug tests than probably every other country combined.
Yep. And that's kind of the irony of all of this is, being tier 1 compliant, if you drug test less, you're going to have less positives overall, right? So if you're just looking at a total number of positives, that actually makes it look cleaner, right? Mm. But to me, catching the people that are cheating makes it cleaner. So, there's going to be people trying to cheat. And the more we test, the more we catch those people. So that's kind of, that's the catch-22 of it. Like on paper, it almost seems like, it's better by, going that route. And I think that's even, we've even looked at, USA Powerlifting's Instagram even posted some of the numbers of drug tests done recently. And there's some countries that, they are tier 1 WADA compliant doing 0 drug tests because every drug test they do is third party, but they do 0. So they have no drug tests that are not
no failures.
no failures, and they have no drug tests that are not fully WADA compliant, even though they've done zero. So, the statement of tier 1 WADA compliant sounds like the gold standard and is like, oh yeah, that's definitely the way to go. But there's no minimum testing essentially with that. So, I think that's one of the fundamental problems and sticking points between USA Powerlifting and the IPF is fundamentally USA Powerlifting wants to drug test as much as possible and catch as many people as possible. At the IPF level, they want to be tier 1 WADA compliant, and that's really what they care about. And it's sad that those two ideals don't match up.
And I think if you go back in time too, and you can, and I know, and everybody else knows in America that, the USAPL is pretty hard on drug testing. I mean, they're legit. Where there's been countries in the past that have been suspended, be it, Russia, Ukraine, for years, and then they have to pay their fines and come back and this and that. And I was involved in some of the teams when they were there, and then some of the teams that in 2005, if you go back to the World Championships in 2005 in Miami, when IPF actually changed their drug testing facility from one country to another, there was world records broke that were just insane. And how many world records were broken that meet, and the lifter quality and the was just incredible. And probably 2/3 of those guys that won worlds, or even the top 3 within the next year, got failed on drug tests because they figure out one lab and then they change labs and they don't have that one figured out, so they go down in flames. So it just happens like that. And I mean, you have examples of people back years and years and years ago that you can see. It's just kind of like you look at somebody, they get a drug test failure, then they are out for 2 years and they come back and they're stronger than what they were supposedly then than they were on drugs before. How does that work? And a perfect example is Alexei Sabokin. I mean, the guy, and it's just to the point to where this guy got popped in like 94, and then he came back in like 97 and was lifting against Wade Hooper, and Wade was clean, and this guy was the only person Wilson's over 600 in any world championship for like a 3-year period, and won 5 world championships in a row, and totaled 1832 at 148 back in 2000. And then years later, he gets popped again. And then basically you've had somebody that has been suspicious this whole time, been really one of the greatest lifters of all time. But how much suspicion is there behind that? When he left, he was totaling high 1600s. And then a few years later, when he came back, he was totaling over 1800. That's something that you got to look at. And I think in, like 2005 or 6 or something like that, when he got his second drug test failure, the guy benched 512 at 148. It's just like, really? Okay. And I mean, that wasn't when the bench press shirts are what they were now. It's just, this guy was just freakishly strong and had a run. And I mean, when things like that happen too, what do you think the other competitors are thinking? I mean, it's just like, okay, I guess we have to just live with this. It's just what it is. And then sometimes too, people decide to go somewhere else and do something else. I mean, the WPO showed up in the early 2000s, and I know there were some lifters with the IPF that went over. With the USAPL that went over to the WPO. And is that part of the reason? Because the IPF, they got tired of that? I mean, let's go over and play in this other kiddie pool, and maybe that was going to be a start of something that they thought was going to be really special. Maybe a pro circuit, be on TV, this and that. It's just something that
keep talking.
We just have been dealing with for generations and decades, because things like this have happened forever, and you think that the people want to in America, a lot of what Americans want to do is have the best competition, but they want to have the best competition, I would think, on an even playing field. And then when they find out maybe it's not, then they get going, maybe let's do this for a while and see how this goes, or this or that, and some people want to lift for some money, and I think some of those people that are in that realm or something like that, I know Siders used to go to Mountaineer Cup, to win some money so he could go to Worlds, I mean, when you're married and you got a kid, you got responsibilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, just, to your point of like, what do other competitors think of, those people that they know are cheating? Like, you almost have two options, like, just accept it and know that you're not going to beat that guy, or that's almost incentive to try to cheat yourself if you're competing against somebody cheating, so that's where I think
I want you to, I don't know if we're still recording, but I want you to specifically say that, because
Yeah,
I think
we're still recording.
I think that's something that has absolutely happened.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah. Okay. But and that that just, it just puts, it's just really a shitty situation. Do you cuss on this? Sorry, I should have asked that first.
Not a big deal.
So
It's really a bad situation for lifters when you're going against somebody that's dirty, and you either you just accept it, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to compete with this person, or B, like, how many people, like, all they care about is trying to get to that top podium spot. That might be incentive enough for them to try to cheat themselves. So and to me that's the root problem of that is not testing enough, because if we're catching that person, and getting them out of that loop, that's, if they're dirty, get them out of there, then all the problems are solved essentially. So I don't like the direction of testing less. I just don't think that's the answer.
I agree. I think also, just even with some of the rules of people like failing the drug test, I think we need to be harsher on that. I mean, I think giving people like 2 or 3 chances when they're gonna cheat. I mean, what does that insinuate? You're going to give me 3 chances to cheat. So I'm hoping that during one of those times, I'm going to win a world championship and then just call it a day, right? So the fact that we're not punishing people harsh enough for failing at an international meet is also like another reason why people would want to cheat. And that kind of goes back to what Sherman was saying earlier about some of the international lifters, where some of them will break the highest like Wilk score ever in IPF history, and then pop a drug test that same year, come back 2 years later and break that, and then come back clean. You know what I mean? So the fact that they know they can always come back gives people incentive to cheat again, as long as they don't get caught this time. And I feel like that ideology needs to die somehow. And the only way we could do that is by punishing people more if they decide to cheat, when there's other federations that don't drug test.
Yeah. And I'm not really up on the term of suspensions, like how long that is. I do know that it, within a year or 2 or 3 years, it went from a 2-year suspension to a 4-year suspension, which is good. But, to your point, I don't know if that's enough of a deterrent for people or not. But, I think the 4-year is better than the 2-year for sure.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is, what you were just saying, that there's plenty of, in the US, there's plenty of places you can go compete and not get drug tested. So I think that's maybe a little bit why our thought process is maybe different from other countries too, is like, we're about being drug free. Like, maybe they don't have other options other places, so people are more incentivized to cheat. I don't know. Just, my big pet peeve is people that compete drug free that are not drug free. Like, you have options in the US, like it just really rubs me the wrong way.
I think a lot of that as well is, and I mean, I've seen this because I've been involved with it for eons. a lot of times it just depends on where you're at and who you're around when you get in powerlifting. I mean, Josh, when you got into powerlifting in college and stuff like that and started a team or whatever, you were involved in the USAPL. But if you would have been involved, you yourself, if you would have been involved in another federation, the people that followed you and the people that you influenced, there's probably a good percentage chance that they would have just followed you if you would have been in a different federation doing a different thing, because that's just who they were around. And I don't want to be the person that sits here and denies that, because that's bullshit, because that's a factor, because where you are involved to start with and how you grow in with the people who start you. I mean, I've seen it all, and I've seen guys that could lift drug free and be crazy strong. I've seen guys take drugs and be freaky strong. I've seen guys lifting big gear, no gear. And I mean, it's just to me that, what people's goals are. I mean, are you lifting for money? Are you lifting for fame? Are you lifting for, all your, followers on Facebook or whatever that other stuff is? I mean, and so much of that stuff, comes back to money. It does, because there's things now in powerlifting that there were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if I tried to charge somebody to train them to powerlift, they would have probably thought I'd lost my damn mind. It just wasn't happening 20 years ago, and now there's ways that people can make money, either, starting their own thing, and even people starting organizations. I mean, you just have some dude and somewhere that gets mad at something or gets in a argument with a leader or something like that. The next thing you know, this guy's got his own federation the next week, and it just grows from there. And how people get involved in the sport. And, sometimes people that are drug free, they really need to step back just a little bit and think, okay, if I was in a different situation with a different group of people, would I have followed and done what these other guys had done, just out of normalcy of what you thought was what everybody was doing? Because there's lots of guys out there that would have probably never taken drugs if they'd have came through Quest Gym the last 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
But you got to talk about the 20 years before that, probably not, I mean, it's just changed, so, and the way the stigma since 88, and Ben Johnson, that just kind of was like the thing that somebody just threw a lighter on a gallon of gas. It just went crazy, and everybody started kind of really looking bad on drugs, and then the legalities of it as well, and it's changed. So you just have to kind of see how much that's worth to you. And there's guys out there that, I mean, it's just, and there's people out there too that are, critical of, this guy's doing this, I wouldn't do that. This guy's doing that, I wouldn't do that. This guy's doing this guy's in gear, this guy's in not. And everybody kind of vilifies the other person, and it's kind of sad in the fact that some of these raw lifters don't realize that the guys that came before them who lifted in gear, especially, 20, 25 plus years ago when gear was almost nothing, to realize that there was somebody that built powerlifting before they got there. And it's not just been 30 minutes that powerlifting was invented, I mean, the IPF where was IPF formed? The IPF wasn't formed in Europe. It was formed in Texas, back in the 70s or 60s or something like either late 60s, early 70s, AAU was the powerlifting affiliate before them.
I think it was like 72 or 73.
So, and then you had the USPF come in, and it's just something that, and Josh, how many people you think know what you just said?
Not many.
And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, these guys are lording this over us, this and that. And you just, to me, I think it's insulting that something that was started here in America, the sport itself, is, gotten to the point to where it's gotten so bastardized that they're telling us how it's going to be, it's freaking ridiculous,
Yeah, so just really quick to piggyback off of what Josh said earlier, for the statistics, 45% of the IPF nations don't do drug testing at all. 53% of the IPF member nations test 0 to 10 lifters a year. 0 failures reported from blood tests. No testing is WADA compliant. 42 nations out of 110 did 0 drug testing in 2017. 46 out of 119 IPF member nations did 0 testing in 2018. 57 of 130 IPF members did 0 testing in 2019. So pretty much it almost feels like we're being targeted, right? Compared to other countries who may or may not have the same restrictions that we do.
Yeah, that is the feel, but again, the IPF's goal is being fully WADA compliant because their goal again is the IOC recognition. Well, what is the bigger black eye for the IPF right now? It's the U.S. is not fully WADA compliant because they're doing all these drug tests that are not third party. Well, let's get that corrected, and to a degree, like playing devil's advocate, like I get where they're coming from, but that again comes back to our I guess difference in fundamentals. Fundamentals isn't the word, but difference in priority. Like our goal is to literally be drug free and catch as many people as possible, versus we just want to be WADA compliant. And again, I fully believe those two should be intertwined, but it's becoming more and more clear that that's not the case.
Josh, what how much do you know or in the fact of the way the USAW does it, USA weightlifting? Because I know they're having to follow a lot of these rules too, and I think they've got 25,000 members. And I do know one thing too, is their fee, ours is like 60 something, theirs is almost 100, so is that factored into?
Are you talking about membership fee? Sure.
Well, yeah, membership fees, yes. And I mean, is that why it's as high as it is? I mean, and do they do the drug testing, just strictly the way, or do you have any knowledge of that? Or because I just feel like a lot of times when we're comparing ourselves to something, we should compare ourselves something that would be kind of similar in the fact of, okay, who else in our country is doing whatever they need to be doing and how are they doing it?
Yeah. And so do not quote me on this, but this is my understanding. To my knowledge, USA Weightlifting doesn't test at the local level. I believe they have an option to if meet directors elect to, but that's at their cost. So I know that all of the USA weightlifting meets that I've gone to locally, there's never been drug testing there. So that essentially is so that's the thing, like that seems to be the standard operating procedure for a lot of sports, I believe, is just testing at that higher level, which again, we could go that route, but then we essentially become not a drug tested organization below the national level. And that's really the sticking point for us, I think.
And I mean, that's something that, you just have standards and beliefs and stuff like that. And, sometimes you're in that situation and you just can't bend, so,
Yeah.
What's going to happen, who knows? Does USAPL, go on their own? And I've heard a little rumblings that they might, start doing some different things and maybe having some pro meets and stuff like that. But I will say that might be a slippery slope. So got to be a little bit careful with that, because when you start throwing money into the thing, there's some people that would like to cheat to get that money. So, it's just, you can look at the Kern, what was, just a few weekends ago, which was one of the strongest competitions that I've ever watched in 40 years. It was just unbelievable, the competition they had there. And maybe some of the squats were kind of borderline or maybe a little high, but it wasn't just something that was just stupid that you've seen in the past when people are hitting all-time world records and they're 3 inches above parallel. So these guys in wraps doing crazy stuff, but that money, made that competition happen, so, but it's just interesting to kind of think how many different realms that we have now compared to what we had, just 20 years ago, which was just very, very little and very little money involved in powerlifting, and you just kind of did it for the love of it, and you just kind of moved that way. And if you had the time and the patience of a good partner, if you were married or not or whatever, because there's some guys out there that think powerlifting's everything and they've never been married, never had a kid, and yeah, you can do things any way you want to do it when you're by yourself, so, and think any way you want to think and do anything you want to do and not affect anybody else but yourself. But there's lots of times where, lady powerlifters, they get in that time of life and they want to start a family and stuff, and they let powerlifting go. And there's been a lot of guys do the same thing, So are we supposed to say, oh yeah, what's wrong with you? You're not dedicated enough. It's just like I heard Daniel Bell say a few weeks ago on a podcast, up at Cap Lino's had his, and the guy's like, he's getting off his sauce so him and his wife can have a child. Did anybody say, hey dude, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you thinking? It's like the guy wanting to be a responsible adult, and he's making decisions, and maybe he's making the same decisions. He was different decisions now than he was back then, but the decisions he made before might have been to help his family with the money that he was winning, So there's just all kinds of ways to look at stuff. I mean, there's a money part of it that wasn't there, 20 years ago, and the money that's in it now, because there's so many members and so many more people doing it. And I'm sure USAW has experienced the same thing. I'm sure their numbers have catapulted the last 10 years, and there's got to be more money, and it's a little bit odd that these guys can afford to have athletes train and get paid, and USAPL's never even had an inkling of a thought of doing something like that. It's just something where you kind of scratch your head and go, what's wrong with this picture? Not to say that the top athletes ought to be getting a check every month, but goodness gracious, let's get them to Worlds without having to pay for it themselves. I think that's something that, why is that not happening? So
I'm not against that. I mean,
what's your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I agree. I think that the top level lifters have put in so much time, work, effort, money that they deserve to, have some sort of compensation, whether it be through sponsorships, whether it be through, the organization sending them to Worlds, et cetera. It really, it really is an issue though of like a lot of this stuff costs a lot of money, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes that, are expensive that people aren't maybe privy to. I don't know. So if we're talking just in terms of, just as an example, if we're talking about sending, the national teams to Worlds, is that something you were saying, Sherman? Like,
well, I mean, when I started coaching back in the early 2000s, the guys got stipends back then. Now, it wasn't like they got their whole trip paid for, but I remember those guys getting money at the event, and I mean, and then it went backwards from there. And it's just like, and I believe honestly too, when some of the conversation with the USAPL was first taught, or the IUDFP was first talked about when they were joining the IPF, that was part of the communication, was helping the athletes. Now, I could be absolutely wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that was part of the reasoning behind, besides just the USPF, with some of their leadership had just lost their damn mind, really. So, but it's just something that, as the membership grew, why didn't and yes, we have a lot of teams, which I understand that, but if USAW is charging $100, for, registration or whatever with their organization, if that's what it costs, or that's what it takes for the USAPL to do that too, I think it's foolish that they're not doing it, and then you sit around and you think about, what people are spending on going to the gym, what people are spending on going on a trip to go to nationals, what people are spending on just a pair of knee sleeves. Are you going to pay more for a pair of knee sleeves than you are for your membership?
I I
Does that
think
sound
I
right?
think a lot of people would say yes to that because
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like, you know, would that really, like, I guess to elaborate, like, would somebody really not be a member? Because I think, what is the membership fee? 65 right now.
I believe that's what I've been.
If it went from 65 to 100, would that really deter people from being members? I personally, I don't think so.
If they're Josh, if they're how much is it to go to a meet?
Yeah,
I mean,
100-ish,
I mean,
give or take.
come on, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's way more than $65. I don't know the last time I saw $65 for an entry fee. That's
Yeah.
that's freaking stupid.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
paid 165 to go to nationals, so that's already over $100.
And it's just like, really, the membership is 65 and to go to nationals is 150 plus.
Yeah.
That's not logical. That's not logical at all. So
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if you guys know. Do you know what other organizations' membership fees are? Because I actually don't know. I'm just curious.
I think when I competed at the WPO World Finals, I had to compete in the AAPF, and I think I paid like $35 for a year membership with that. I think USPA is like around 45-ish, somewhere around there. So I think USAPL in the last couple of years has been probably the most expensive. But I mean, again, even if USAPL is the most expensive, it's just like what Sherman was saying. If we want to compare to like other things, it's a lot cheaper. Bodybuilding is ultra expensive,
Yeah.
compared to powerlifting. So, and people still do that. So,
and if you want to think about it too, Josh, I mean, what is one of our biggest expenses is drug testing.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, you got to pay for that somehow. And if we're charging $65 and we're the only damn federation doing drug testing, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean, what's 22,000 times 65? Give me that math on that real quick.
That is one. Hold on, I got to count my decimal places. It's 1.43 million.
So bump that up 35 more dollars times 22,000 and see if that won't pay for some drug testing.
Yeah, that'd bring it to 2.2 million. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting. I mean, I don't disagree with you there. I think that would be and we have been increasing it over time. Like every couple of years, it's gone up. And people have argued to make it higher. But then you also have sometimes it's the people that scream the loudest that are heard too. Like you get somebody saying, well, so and so organization is whatever you said, 35, 45. Why are we charging so much? It's double. Double sounds bad, but it's a difference of what, 45, 35 bucks, so that's not really a big deal.
Let me ask you this, Josh, and I guess you're talking about the NGB, correct?
Yeah, I'm just talking in general, just like talking to people, that have discussed the membership price and stuff like that. And I agree, like to do everything that needs to be done, like, yeah, it costs money. And, I don't personally, I mean, again, I'm speaking for myself completely here. Like I would pay $200-$300 for an annual membership. It's an annual membership. Like I don't see that being a big. I mean, it's on the high side, I'm sure. But think of what we could do if we did charge that.
There might be a lot less bitching about things because there would be money hopefully sent and used for the right purpose.
Yeah.
Now sometimes, you think back, when I was going to Open Worlds back in the early 2000s, and these guys were getting stipends back then, and there was 4,000 members. If they can give stipends to those guys and have 4,000 members, why the hell can't we give stipends to guys when there's 20,000 members? That to me is just like that. Something's not right with that. And if the membership needs to be raised up double, then raise it up double.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully the leadership is smart enough if they do something like that they can predicate what they should do with a majority of those funds. Okay, we're going to raise the membership up 75% from 65 to 90 or whatever, and this extra percentage is going to go towards our world teams and drug testing and stuff like that. But, you know, to sit there and see what happened in the past and then just see how things digressed, you know, and that's what they've done. And I understand, and they'll sit there and say, oh, there's, you know, they'll argue it two different ways. You know, there'll be an argument about, you know, how many people are going to get affected because what's going on right now is like 300 to 400. But when they start the argument back the other way about not helping the athletes, they come up with thousands. Josh, is that not the truth?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure, I guess, the exact numbers in those arguments, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, it's a tough balance, I guess, because there are a lot of things that in principle, like, I feel should be done. But I will also say, like, I also see so going back to, you know, just the 22, or what did you say, 22,000 members?
22,000 times 65.
Yeah, I mean, that's 1.43 million right there. Like, that sounds like a heck of a lot of money. But when you start looking at the, you know, how much, you know, the drug testing costs. So I guess just think of it just because, so the membership revenue, it's all scaled essentially, meaning, scaled isn't the right word, but, you know, it's not all, I mean, as a business person, you know, it's not like extra revenue doesn't mean that's 100% income or what is the word? Profit. Yeah. Thanks. Mm-hmm. And, you know, part of the issue with, you know, and it's a good problem, but part of the issue with the quick growth as well in membership is, like, you know, what used to be handled by volunteers is now, like, requiring 3, 4, 5 staff people that now have to be paid salaries. So some of that, you know, gets taken out too, you know, thinking of it that way. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, me personally, yeah, I think, you know, I'd be fine with a higher membership fee to be able to do all these things. And I think, you know, maybe that's the direction that it'll go. I don't know, but.
And I mean, the only reason it should is if they stay in the IPF.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, how much money would be freed up if we were not paying the IPF all that money to be the affiliate, and, you know, all the national team fees, and, you know, all the crazy amounts of money that has to go to them. So yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, without, you know, if the IPF and USA Powerlifting separate, yeah, then there shouldn't be a need to have that drastic increase, I don't think. But
what's your opinion, Josh? What if this does happen and the IPF, you know, or the USAPL just kind of doesn't play ball with the IPF, what the USAPL could kind of eventually be in, and I'm not talking about 6 months, I mean, but in 3 to 4 years, and maybe the direction that might be. And I know if you guys don't know, Josh is on the EC, so that's why sometimes he gets the hard questions. But just curious, Josh, what do you think, and what do you think too in the fact of, you know, a lot of the things that the USAPL had over the last, you know, 10 plus years is, you know, that IPF affiliate to kind of, you know, have above and beyond for the athletes to kind of strive towards?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know. You know, we can speculate. You know, on one side, you know, splitting with the IPF, you know, there'd be more revenue freed up, you know, essentially. You know, could we do, you know, more pro meets, more money meets potentially? The counter side is, you know, if we do leave, well, how many members leave? Because maybe everybody is chasing that IPF, you know, competition. So, you know, if membership, again, I'm speculating both ends because I have no idea what will happen. You know, if we let's say USA Powerlifting does split, you know, membership goes from 22,000 to 10,000. okay, maybe that happens. Well, a lot of that extra revenue that we were thinking about for pro meets, well, now we don't necessarily have it. So then we're just, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. And I'll be honest with you. I don't know what the answer is. Like my feeling is like,
Let me say something real quick, Josh. You know how to effectively take that out of the equation totally? If you go from 20,000 to 10,000, double your, organization fee. And then you got the same amount of money.
yeah.
So if you got 10,000 people paying 120, or you got 20,000 people paying 65, it's the same amount of money,
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that might be, the way of the world is everything goes up, and it's just, it's ludicrous to me that people complain about their membership fee. It just, when they spend 3 times that much going to one meet, so, and I mean, maybe I'm beating a dead horse or saying something that people haven't thought about or do think about, but it's just, crying a river because you're paying $60 for a membership, I think is pretty much asinine. So,
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't know everybody's circumstance, but if
their circumstance is that they can't pay $65, they can't spend $150 on a meet.
that's what I was thinking, I didn't necessarily want to say it, but I figured that you would jump in and say that.
Is there anything you guys want to continue to add? Or is there like anything else in the Constitution that is worth mentioning that might cause some discrepancies outside of just the local drug testing?
Yeah, there's a few other things like in the IPF bylaws, which were recently redone. Basically national federations have to follow the IPF rule book and constitution to a T, meaning, nobody really knows exactly what that was meant to portray, but like my thought on that is it means that our divisions have to match. So, that would be essentially saying no more youth division potentially, because the IPF doesn't recognize youth lifting. The T1, T2, T3 that we do, we would have to make that sub junior to match what the IPF does, etc. I think that's not a big deal. I mean, it is, but it isn't. I think the big issue comes into like IPF approved equipment. That would essentially mean that, at the IPF level and we enforce it at our national level, is you have to wear all IPF approved equipment. Well, the new bylaws to me says every single meet has to be IPF approved equipment. So any local meet, that would essentially mean like our high school meets, lifters are allowed to wear, shorts and a t-shirt. But that would, actually going even further, that would essentially mean we can't do high school meets if our divisions have to match up. But we would also have to have IPF approved equipment at every level. And I think that would be a huge deterrent to, I mean, a new lifter that's trying to get into a meet that doesn't know anything about anything. They just want to do a meet. Well, I got to buy all this IPF approved stuff if I go here, or I can just go here and I can wear whatever, cheap singlet I want. I think that's a big issue. And I don't know the exact interpretation of that. If I'm saying that exactly right, when I read it, that's what I take away from it, I guess.
And I feel like everybody knows pretty simplistic what that revolves around to is money. You know, they're just trying to get more money, just like they've done for the last 20 years. That's their main deal. So, and trying to push us around because we're probably giving them more money than anybody, and they just want even more,
I don't know what the answer is. Like my gut feeling is like where I just have the big, I guess, problem is, well, I have a lot of problems, but one of my big issues is like, being WADA compliant at the national level and up, even like that's doable. I think if we could continue normal testing like we are at the local level, like I don't see what the harm is in that. And that's the part that just bothers me is we're not allowed to do that because it's not third party, et cetera. But it's okay to do exactly that same thing and not do any testing at that lower level. And I just can't get my mind around how that is better. That's the part that it really bothers me. And I don't know. I guess I don't know what the answer is there.
And that's a, something that's might not be able to be fixed, and it's just what it is. And then the ball just keeps rolling and cycles keep turning, and, they go from one federation to the other. And in my opinion, I think if they go away from the USAPL, they're going to regret it. I really, really feel that way because, the money that they're trying to milk out of everywhere and everybody that they possibly can, I'm thinking they're milking a lot from us. And if they don't have that tit to feed on, they're going to find out if they should have kept with us. So.
Yeah, my thing is like, at least for me, from like an athlete's perspective, it makes me sad that we're having this discussion and the fact that we might not be competing at IPF Worlds possibly this year. I mean, for myself, I would love to compete at the highest level all the time, but I like to look at powerlifting from a wider perspective on how it can kind of influence us locally as well. And if they want to control some of the things that we do locally, especially the drug testing, then I definitely think that we do need to stand up and represent what we represent and be firm on that. That way we don't lose the true essence of what USAPL originally was created for anyways, in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'll be honest, like my goal is I'll be a master in a couple of years. My goal is to compete at Masters Worlds, IPF Masters Worlds as a master lifter. That's been my goal for a while. I competed as a junior and I made one open team once kind of by default, but so that's always kind of been that, I very much value the competition and competing at a true world championship, et cetera. But, I can't put that above the drug testing issue. That's the part that that's kind of a deal breaker for me. Like we can't, the organization as a whole, I don't see how we can, look ourselves in the mirror if we are not drug testing at every level. I mean, that's the whole reason I think that the ADFPA was created, was to have a true drug tested, drug free organization at every level. And, I guess I don't think we can, speaking for myself, I don't see how I can look myself in the mirror if I'm okay with that.
And so I think some of that stuff, Josh, and I'm sure none of us want to vilify anybody, and the fact that there's going to be guys in the USAPL, they're going to go to wherever they have to go to lift in the IPF because it's still considered the drug tested worlds, So if they have to go and lift somewhere else, I don't think that I'm going to be frowning on those guys or looking at them in a different way or anything like that. It's because they were just put in a situation that they have a dream, and a lot of the dream is trying to go to World Games. There's been people that's been trying to do that for 3, 4, 5 years, and it was supposed to have been last year, and then it just subsequently, because of the virus, got pushed. But these guys and girls, and I'm sorry if I don't mention the girls as I should, but the athletes themselves, I think they deserve to have a place to compete that is, basically maybe under the Olympic flag, that's what it's going to be next year. I mean, I've been to World Games. I've been a coach at World Games, and it was awesome. And for those guys to be able to go and compete and have that kind of, venue and that kind of just, podium and stuff like that, it was incredible, and it's something that these guys just really have a burning desire to try to do, just like people have a burning desire to go to the Olympics. So, there's going to be things, and there's going to have to be decisions. And one of the things that is out there too is there's some pretty guys that are heavy now in sponsorship. And these guys will have some really strength kind of pushing athletes different ways. Because if some of these guys that are big time sponsors that, are out there and these big time athletes are wearing their equipment and stuff like that, I can promise you this, they're going to get, pushed one way or the other. What direction that is, I can't say. But if they're IPF tried and true, there's going to be people, heading the door like roaches and when the light comes on. So is that good or bad? I can't say that, but I just know that there are, other things that are playing in and weighing on people's decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, speaking for myself, I mean, I got 4 or 5 lifters that I coach that, we're training to try to make worlds, whether it's open, masters, juniors, whatever. They've already, some of them have already told me like that's their goal still, like regardless of the outcome, so then you have somebody like me who's, very, very passionate about drug free and USA powerlifting. And, that's where I'm going to go. I'm not going to just abandon my lifters either, so, how's that play out? I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's really making it difficult, I think, in a lot of situations for a lot of people. Because it's almost like if and again, I'm not. I want to stay with the IPF if at all possible. If we can figure out some sort of compromise on the drug testing thing where we can still do testing at every level, stuff like that, and it work out, like that's still my preference. But if something does happen where there's a split, like it feels like what you said, there's going to have to be people are going to have to almost pick a side, it seems like, and I don't like that, I guess, so much.
And I just feel like that's the nature of the beast, Josh. I mean, it was like that back in the late 90s when I was having to make the same decision. Am I going to stay with the USPF or am I going to go with the USAPL? And a big part of my decision was the drug testing part of it. I mean, that was a big part of my decision, and I mean, there was guys that were bitching and complaining and this and that. And you're just like, good gracious, dude. You look at somebody like that sometimes and you're just like, in my mind, the first thing that comes through my mind when somebody starts bitching about stuff, bitching about how much stuff costs, bitching about what this organization doing, what this organization is doing. One of the things that come to my mind is like, have you ever volunteered at a meet? Mm-hmm. Have you ever ran a meet? Have you ever taken your judge certification? Have you ever done anything except for yourself? I mean, and it's just like, dude, you need to shut the F up, And that was just felt like that the position that I was in back in the early 2000s. It's like, okay, there's a change. So let's jump in and try to make things better, And that's why I came the state chair of Georgia for USAPL and ran meets and tried to help kids get to junior worlds or open worlds or whatever, master worlds. And I've had athlete after athlete after athlete after athlete and, achieve that. And it was something I was proud of for them and for myself. It was just a lot of fun to see those guys get their goals,
Yeah.
So it's something that, it's what it is, but it's just something that we have to kind of roll with the punches a little bit. And hopefully, different organizations won't be trying to point the finger and say, you suck, or, why are you doing this, or people have different goals, and goals could be make money. Goals could be IPF worlds. Goals could be, all-time totals, which I think that's something that's not looked at strongly enough sometimes when people talk about, I want the competition. I want the competition. I want the competition.
There's been plenty of competition.
There's competition. It's just like, hey guys, if you want some competition, put on a squat suit and come lift against Oleg. I mean, I just get, one of the things that really impressed me a few weeks ago is when Capolino had his podcast and had Austin Perkins on there. That guy knew who Yaroslav Oleg was. He knew who he was. And I promise you this, if you ask 10 raw lifters who Yaroslav Oleg is, 9.9 of them ain't going to know, and it's just like, really? But it was just impressive to know that that kid had that in the back of his mind. And then he had something to the fact of, I want some of that guy, because if I get that guy, that means I'm all time, baby. That means I'm all time. And sometimes being all time is you don't even get the opportunity. I mean, is James going to get to lift against Alexei Savokin? No, he's not going to be able to give a lift against him, who won 5 worlds back in the day. But that guy, he posted a total, just like Dan Austin posted a total, just like Caleb Williams posted a total, just like Anthony Conyers posted a total. If you want to be great, go after numbers and compete against yourself. Compete against yourself and go after the numbers, because at the end of the day, when you get to the end of your career, those trophies ain't going to mean too much. I've got a box full of them downstairs. If somebody wants them, I'll give them to them. It's just the numbers and what you did in the grand realm of what you wanted to do, and if you get there, great. And if you have to change federations to get to where you want to go, hey, that's on you, but there are different ways that you can look at things and know, are you the best? What did you squat? What did the guy that you're trying to beat squat? Where did you do it? I mean, some of these backyard meets, you have to kind of frown on them sometimes. Doing it at Worlds, that's pretty badass, and a lot of guys want to do that, and hey, that's great, but there are different things that you can look at about being in competition with yourself, numbers, and people.
Yep. Like for me, that's the sad part. I always want to do the big totals at those big meets, like at international powerlifting meets, because I mean, not this isn't to like knock down on the competition, but a lot of the people that show up at USAPL Open Nationals equipped, a lot of the guys that have been winning are going to come back year after year after year after year doing the same thing, using nationals like as a stepping stone to international, and if nationals is all that we got, then like Sherman is saying, I'm literally just competing against myself, and that's the highest that I can do outside of competing against history. Now, if USAPL Open Nationals is the only spot where I could compete at the highest level without any pressure, it doesn't make me feel super happy knowing that I can hit like an 1850 total at one point, but knowing that no one's like coming close, or no one's pushing me, no one's giving me any pressure. And if that's the case, like what is that going to deter me from going elsewhere? Because like for myself, I want to be the best of the best everywhere, not just single ply. I want to get into that raw circuit a little bit. I want to get into the multiply circuit a little bit. And pretty much what this is doing is it's opening up that road for me to kind of just go everywhere. If IPF Worlds is not going to be kind of the main thing that I can eventually lead to, So I'm really hoping things turn out well, especially with the USAPL and IPF. But if they're going to get rid of the local drug testing, then I'm just like you, Josh. I can't stand for that, even if it's going to get rid of my heart and soul in terms of competition.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's hard to weigh weigh the ramifications of both sides of that and be okay with, I guess the split right now in terms of the difference in philosophy. I guess it's just hard to fathom. Rationalize, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's pretty much it on my end. Anything else? Any last remarks? Any hopes? Any comments on the current state before we shut down the podcast?
I'll say it again. I just think it's important if you are a member and you're going to be at nationals, I do encourage people to come to the NGB meeting, because I'm sure this will be discussed and you get to kind of hear from a lot of people, their input, and, communicate your input to your state chair. Like, that's another thing. Like, there are avenues to express your opinion. So if you go to usapowerlifting.com, you got all of the state chair contacts, you got all of the athletes representative contacts. You have the executive committee contacts. Like, reach out to your voting representatives and let them know how you feel. I think that's important.
And if you're not going to do that, don't bitch when things change. Because I mean that's just weak. I mean, seriously, that's weak. I actually called Kathy a couple days ago and said, has anybody contacted you? Has anybody gave you opinions? Has anybody talked to you, communicated with you about, what they wanted to do as a Georgia State member and stuff like that? And she told me no. So it's just like, oh my gosh, that's slightly sad, and it's just something that I feel like that, powerlifting is not a pro sport. So it's kind of a hobby for a lot of people, and they just want to have fun and they want to go somewhere where it's clean, and they want to have real judging from people that, see it the way the rules were written and judge it the way the rules were written. And I think that's one of the great things about USAPL. And it's been one of the great things since I've ever been involved with them. So that in itself, probably is going to be something they can stand on regardless, and have that opportunity for people that, are not trying to break world records, are not trying to even break state records, but just be better, And if you want to be better and you want to come in a clean environment, and you want to have, the proper judging where the lifts are done appropriately to the way the rules are written, hey, come on.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
I agree.
All right. Well, if that's the case, that's it for this podcast. Hopefully everything kind of turns out well with the state that everything is going. If we get more updates going on from here, going into nationals or something like that, most likely we'll probably have another podcast such as this and probably invite maybe Josh and a few more other people to kind of chime in a little bit in the future. But for now, with everything going on, if you need any lifting equipment, again, check out Quest-Nutrition.com for any lifting stuff. Same thing with coaching inquiries. Hit up Team Roar. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, at Nationals. And that's pretty much it, guys. Anything else?
Josh,
I think that pretty much covers it.
appreciate your time.
All right. Appreciate it, Josh.
Thank you.